figure this out on our own without looking it up. I think it's
Yeah,
Tom Jones.
You Make Me So is not enough to search. We'll have to figure this one out on our own.
I think it's Tom Jones.
It's Tom Jones-esque.
I see Tom Jones singing that song with his shirt unbuttoned to his navel.
But you often see that.
Or he's wearing like that piratey outfit.
Whenever you close your eyes, you see that. That's not helpful.
We have to figure this out. The mystery who sings that song. Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to the viewing audience across the pond. My name is Jason Miles, your host for another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you are liking what you're seeing, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe and that notifications bell so you are alerted whenever we go live, because we are constantly adding new shows and doing cross streams with other channels. Speaking of new shows, just yesterday we had episode 2 of my co-host, who sadly won't be here with us today, Pascal Robert's Frat Guy Fridays, where they discussed race science and Black Greek life. How does the eugenic movement affect Black fraternity life? If you are interested in that episode is up in its very own playlist. Yes, we have playlists for all the shows that we do here on TIR because we do so many shows. Now, with that out of the way, let me bring in the faceless voice of reason, show producer, the person that puts so many of these shows together, the M. Toussaint.
Hello, hello. The name of the song is You Make Me So Very Happy by Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Oh!
In 1968.
And who was the lead singer of Blood, Sweat, and Tears?
Who is the lead singer? I don't know.
Can you please look that up?
It's not Tom Jones.
I'll hold.
All right, fine. I'll hold. Okay. Brenda Holloway, no. Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Also known as BS and T.
Story of my life.
Yeah.
Bullshit and titties. That's all I'm about. It's just bullshitting and titties.
Jesus. It could have just been tea that you drank. But no. No, you just went there.
No. There's a person that watches the show, and their father plays like heavy metal, and he wanted to send me a shirt of his father's band, and has like the band's name on the back of it. It says like beer and pussy, and I was like, I can't wear this anywhere.
Oh wow!
Like, thank you for the shirts.
Yeah.
I mean, I could probably wear it here. because some of the shirts people wear here are hilarious. The amount of Confederate flags that I see people wearing here that have no idea what they are is rather hilarious.
Wonderful.
Or just like right-wing shirts. See some MAGA shirts sometimes. And it's not worn in an ironic way or because it's just a shirt that somebody got at a work in.
Found it. The lead singer is David Clayton Thomas, a Canadian from Toronto. So you don't know him. He goes to another school.
I got a girlfriend. She don't go here. She goes to another school.
There you go.
Also, before we start the show, MT and I would like to say thank you to all the subscribers and the patron community. You guys are the biscuit wheels in the proverbial gravy train that makes TIR move. Now, if you are not part of this community, first of all, subscribe. It's free. It's easy. But if you want to be part of the patron community and have access to champagne rooms past and present, be part of movie night, which is coming up soon, and also be part of the live audience for the Mau Mau Hour, be part of the call-in, which we might be experimenting with today, where we do a call-in during the free show. I always get nervous when we open up the phone lines. Oh. There's only one way. Become a patron for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year. It can all be yours.
Biscuit wheels.
You're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels. The first time I heard that was in the movie Kingpin, and I laughed so hard I got a bloody nose.
Wow, that's a lot of violent laughter.
That happened to me 3 times watching a movie. Kingpin, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and Fear of a Black Hat.
Unbelievable. This is going to be wonderful for the trivia session. We're not going to do it.
You're going to do it. This is your life, Jason episode for the show's 4th birthday this year.
In the style of the newlywed couple. So
am I going to be the host, Bob Barker, or am I going to be the newlywed? I'm so confused.
You're going to be the newlywed.
And you're going to be Bob Barker.
We're all going to be married to you. And we're all going to hold up placards that show our answers. And they're all going to be wrong because you're so esoteric. Is that the word?
Esoteric. Look, I rewatched Fear of a Black Hat the other night for no good reason. And where I didn't have a bloody nose, I did laugh uncontrollably at a few. And I knew the jokes were coming, and they still made me laugh uncontrollably. I mean, when he's trying to explain how he has a song called Booty Juice. Wow. That's political, because society is the ass. And how can you get in that ass? And when is your ass at its juiciest?
Nice.
That movie is genius. I thought it was way better than CB4.
I do remember one movie that made me laugh uncontrollably. And that movie is Grease.
Really?
Yeah. There's a scene where John Travolta is being serious at a drive-in, but behind him they're doing the "Let's go out to the lobby," and
yeah,
they're showing that cartoon, and there's just this hot dog doing somersaults behind him while he's being serious, and it just makes me laugh so hard.
I saw Grease 2 first.
Ooh, that's not good.
So someone needs to write an academic paper about if you watch Grease 2 first, you'll never get Grease 1.
No.
Like I tried to watch Grease 1. I'm like, John Travolta just doesn't do it for me like that weird British man.
That's so weird. Oh my gosh.
But I didn't know you were a fan of the Grease movies.
Grease movie.
You didn't watch part 2?
Drop out. I memory hold it. It was too traumatic for me.
That they made a sequel to it?
Yep.
Really? Like Aliens? You were like, oh, I can't do it.
No, thank you.
There's certain movies I won't watch certain remakes. I didn't watch the remake. I won't watch the remake of Red Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And a good friend of mine was a producer on the remake of Karate Kid, and I won't watch it. Can't watch it.
Can't watch it.
If it doesn't have Daniel LaRusso in it, or Pat Morita, can't do it.
Someone in the chat said Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Can't watch the remake.
They remade those movies? That's how
they remade it with that lady.
What lady? April O'Neil?
Yeah, they remade it with a different.
Oh, and they made her black or something? Like
no, it was Megan
Day.
What's her face? No. Megan.
Good?
The one who's always in trouble in Hollywood.
Megan. Fox.
There we go.
She's April O'Neil?
She's April O'Neil.
Word?
And she looks a little bit weird in yellow.
Did they give her a perm?
No. She's just got long hair and she's running around.
Just running around the sewer?
Yep. Kush Look says we're trauma dumping on TIR.
So Kush Look made a comment when we did the champagne room where we did play-by-play for the middle school dance-off.
Oh, yeah.
And that comment has been stuck in my head every time the show starts because Kush Look said that one kid's move, that achy breaky that he did, is what he does whenever the TIR music starts. That kid doing an achy breaky was too freaking much for me.
Oh my gosh.
Every time I hear the music, I just picture a person that I have no idea what they look like, just like a groaner version of that kid going, oh. That's all I see in my head whenever the music starts. Just ruined it for me. How was Thursday's show?
Thursday's show was good. We got to meet Kike Autry, a therapist in Texas.
I got to see a little bit of it while I was driving back from the Bay Area. Nice. Whenever we mention like Jordan Peterson's name on a show, sometimes the chat and the comments go in a whole other direction. It seemed like that was fine.
It was fine because we understood the context in which we were bringing him up. And what was more important was talking about the hikikomori and how so many people seem to identify with it, including our very own Pascal.
Yeah, I missed that.
It's must watch.
Wow, Kushlik said Jordan Dubin Peterson. Oh.
Mind blown.
Damn. I don't know if Dubin is up this early on a Saturday, but it's pretty mean. Well, look, let's get ready to bring in our guest who has been waiting patiently and had no idea they had to sit through all this. Superhero movies and TV shows are now tentpole big Hollywood movies. Little kid Jason loves it. But there is a bit of fascination with the idea that either really rich, really physically gifted, or really smart, rich, and powerful people are the Earth's only hope against indestructible evil. Do you really see Elon Musk as a Tony Stark character? But there are real people in history that led common citizens to defeat technologically superior armies without mutant strength or laser swords. Our guest today has written part 2 to his successful Buenaventura Durruti series, where he tells the story of the cross-continental team-up of 2 anarchists to liberate their people. This is from the press release for book 2. A fusion of Braveheart and V for Vendetta, set just before the Spanish Civil War, Durruti, Shadow of the People revolves around the titular character and ultimate working class hero, Buenaventura Durruti. He was a real-life modern-day Robin Hood who carried the future in his heart and a gun in every pocket. The Zorro with the Colt 45 spent his life battling the forces of evil on behalf of ordinary people against powerful, wealthy, and corrupt elites who ruled them with an iron fist. Such a life all but guarantees you'll rub shoulders with some incredibly interesting people, and Durruti was no exception. Durruti, Shadow of the People #2 chronicles the Spaniards' legendary crossover, inverted quotes, with the leader of the revolutionary insurgent army of Ukraine, better known as the Black Army, one Nestor Ivanovich Makhno. Makhno. You doing that guy. Makhno. Out of your mind. I think I'm doing that. Makhno. That's what what's his name's wife should have said. Makhno, I ain't doing shit. No. Pregnant as hell. You can get off your ass and do it. Makhno. Nestor Makhno was one of the most colorful and compelling heroes of the Russian Revolution, a saber-wielding Cossack at the head of a great peasant army that was, at times, more than 100,000 strong, a born leader and, quote, strategist of unsurpassed ability who possessed a truly epic capacity for organization and battle. Both Makhno and Durruti came from humble beginnings during one of the most unstable periods of war, exploitation, and turmoil our species has ever faced. Both rose above the petty hatreds, xenophobia, and brutal domination characteristic of their time to command armies of revolutionaries tens of thousands strong. No doubt each sensed in each other a kindred spirit, and so like every great hero between the pages of a comic, it wasn't long before their lives intersected. This true story is the stuff of dreams and ballads and has been rendered in exquisite detail by two up-and-coming Spanish artists and an award-winning writer. It is a historic tale rendered over more timely in the face of Russia's brutal and disastrous invasion of Ukraine. By telling this story now, we hope to aid and inspire those engaged in their own present struggle for liberty. Our guest today, Brenton Lengel, is an author, martial artist, and Appalachian Trail 2000 Miller. In addition to a BA in theater from the University of Kentucky in Lexington, he was trained under Kentucky poet laureate Gurney Norman, comics legend Ron Martz, and Emmy Award-winning screenwriter Jacob Kruger. Writer-creator Brenton Legal's previous series, Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, was published by Scout Comics and received the 2020 Ringo Award nominations, a combined quality rating of 8 out of 10 on the Metacritic site, Comic Book Roundup, and was named one of the top 50 comics of 2019 by Pipe Dream Comics. Please welcome, coming all the way live from a bunker somewhere in Northern America, comic author Brenton Legal.
Hey, comrades. Thank you so much for bringing me in here. And thank you for the Manco.
I was like, oh yeah, I should ask him how to say it. And then you had said it when we were talking. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna say it right. And then I totally forgot again.
One of the hardest things for me is I have like a weird form of dyslexia. So I'm constantly switching letters and names if I'm not like really careful. Mm-hmm. So I have probably called him Manco.
It's not Manco, it's
Makhno.
Makhno.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Makhno. You must be out of your goddamn mind.
Oh, I am out of my goddamn mind. I think we've established that. But also it's Appalachian Trail 2000 Miler, not Miller.
Oh, I like Miller better.
It's much more interesting. You've got 2,000, things of grain. You're milling them,
making some bread.
In my mind, you're just milling around the trail. She loves me.
She loves me not.
Nice. That's a big old B. Because you did walk the entire Appalachian Trail.
Yep, Maine to Georgia.
That is a gorgeous this is a gorgeous drive up in the Appalachians, especially when you get like up in Kentucky and West Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's of all the drives in America that I've made, that is one of my favorites. Most frightening, but one of.
My wife and I had our honeymoon in my favorite trail town, which is located like just like the whole town's like a block long. It's in Hot Springs, North Carolina, right on the North Carolina-Tennessee border. They have natural hot springs that like have been in use for 5,000 years. Like there's Native American pictographs on the walls of the mountains surrounding it. And I was terrified driving into there late at night, like just going through the incredibly twisty, windy road. And I remember I looked out the window and be like, is that a deer? And then I realized it's a giant wild boar.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No.
So we had a very interesting honeymoon.
Well, here, I want to ask you this. First of all, thanks for joining us today. I know it was a bear to get this whole show together, but we did. Mm-hmm. Now, what made you want to do part 2 in the Durruti saga? And I love that in real life, Durruti and Makhno are called the Avengers. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, not Makhno, but Durruti. But yeah, so here's I started researching the Spanish Civil War in depth in like 2011. I spent about 10 years as a playwright in and around Manhattan, and so like. I was looking kind of for my next story, and I got very involved with Occupy Wall Street. And I was reading at the time, Homage to Catalonia by George Orwell. And they kept bringing up this group called the Friends of Durruti. So I was like, oh, okay, who the heck is this Durruti guy? Mm-hmm. And I looked him up and I was just like, this dude's like the freaking coolest guy. How do I not know about it? Oh, right. He's an anarchist, of course. Mm-hmm. So, I kind of felt like a need to tell this story, to express like what I had found in this massive suppressed history. And while I was researching Durruti, I also came upon a meeting that he had with Ukrainian anarchist and leader of the Black Army, Nestor Makhno. It's occurred in Paris shortly after Durruti was released from prison for trying to kill the Spanish king. And like it's one of the most dramatic things like I've ever seen, because here are these like two heroes, one about to go into battle against fascism in Spain, and another who fought while the Reds and the Whites were fighting each other for the right to rule Ukraine, he cut a black line of liberty between them to free it. And so like they're meeting in this like Bond-esque like clandestine meeting in Vincennes, and at this point Nestor Makhno basically passes the revolutionary torch to Durruti. He essentially, and then he says to him, when your revolution comes, call on me. Nestor Makhno has never refused a fight. If I am still alive when it all begins, I will be one soldier among many. And I was just like, okay, how do you not write that? So I got really, and what's so weird, because I was like, wait, are you telling me they had a crossover? What's very strange is that Durruti's life has a lot of weird comic overlaps. One of which is, of course, that his anarchist group was one of their names was Los Justicieros, which literally means the Avengers. And Durruti, because this predates Marvel Comics, Durruti is quite literally the first Avenger, who then has a crossover with an actual literal Winter Soldier. Makhno battled in like -4 degrees in Ukraine in like in the dead of winter. So it was this absolutely incredible story of passion and devotion and revolutionary ideals clashing with brutal reality. And so I was, I wound up working it into a full-length screenplay, which has been optioned by Enon Films, a small socialist film company out of Madrid and Sheffield, England.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I suddenly found success as a comic author with Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, I realized like, oh, I can just start doing comics. I can do all of these movies that I've written, but have never been able to get made because that would take millions and millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So right after Swaza, you get famous for doing a series about zombies and fairy tales, so obviously you follow that up with a biopic about a famous anarchist.
Mm-hmm.
But like what's been so incredible about doing this is that as I have adapted it from the screenplay like into comics, I'm becoming aware of all of these other like really incredible things about this story, that like the deeper I go down this like historical rabbit hole, the cooler the cooler this gets.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really exciting, and that's where the story came from.
Are you writing these for a younger audience that's quite captured right now by the superhero tales that are so popular? Like I want to say we're around the same age. I'm 45.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm 40.
Okay, and so when we grew up, it was hard to find superhero stuff on TV that wasn't animated. And now I feel like superhero stuff is everywhere. Like when I was a little kid, my grandmother used to do me this favor and she would record me. Do you remember the Spider-Man made for TV 3-part miniseries that used to come on with like Tim Field's mom was in it? Do you remember that, Toussaint?
No, I don't.
You don't remember that? And Peter Parker was like this skinny ass dude, and they didn't even have like the web shoot out of his hand. He had a bracelet. And they had to use the Batman thing when he walked up a wall where it was like the camera was sideways. You don't remember that?
No.
I'm the only one that watched it.
You're a boy.
I may have caught parts of it. I have memories of a live action Spider-Man that seemed to have been shot in the 70s.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't realize it was a mini series. I thought it was like a full on series because the episode that I watched was like very episodic.
Yes, it was going to be a TV show and it failed. Like most things did that were superhero related back then. The only thing that really was successful was the Superman movie in '79 that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course Batman doesn't come out for 10 years later. The live action Batman. But now we're just bombarded with superhero everything. For the last, 12 years, Marvel has dominated the box office with their movies and also kind of dominated streaming services. Disney spun off their own streaming service using Marvel and Star Wars stuff.
They've dominated our lives.
It is part of pop culture now in a way where when you're a younger person and you like anime and superhero comics, you're a weirdo. You're the characters of Stranger Things this last season. And the fact that Stranger Things is even a thing really kind of speaks to, what we're talking about right now, this kind of glorification of inverted quotes nerd culture. When you're writing these, are you trying to hit a younger audience?
To tell you the truth, I don't tend to write for an audience. I more write what is particularly interesting to me and what I think people will connect with. As a playwright in Manhattan, I was writing everything from Snow White Zombie Apocalypse to my previously most famous work, North to Maine, A Journey on the Appalachian Trail, which is the first play ever written about the Appalachian Trail. And, I did this because I've been accused of being a method writer. Part of, part of, becoming part of telling this story about these anarchists was me getting involved with Occupy Wall Street and getting my ass kicked by the NYPD. So like,
did you shake your fist at them and say, I will write about this?
Oh, so in that time, me and a buddy of mine, John Murdoch, a really phenomenal comedian, it was the 6-month anniversary of Occupy. We linked hands. I was in a Mitt Romney mask. He was in a Barack Obama mask. And we just walked through the police line. And the cops were just like, did they just fucking do that? And I remember we were forced over to like the sidewalk. And then suddenly this like freaking ginormous, sergeant comes down, throws me into a motorcycle, knees me in the spine, and starts yelling like, stop resisting, stop resisting. So yeah. And wait, I just like,
does John Murdoch make balloon animals?
Yeah, oh my God, yes, he does.
I know him. I know.
Yes, we've come full circle. No, that's incredible.
That's awesome.
How do you know this, Toussaint? How do you know this person?
I think he used to have a show on WBAI.
Yep, I remember that.
That's the guy. We're Facebook friends.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Absolutely, really brilliant. And he got me arrested. So my wife loves that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm there on the ground. The mask is like twisted on my head, and I'm like, I'm not resisting, asshole. Now put the cuffs on me, and I pop my hands back. Mm-hmm. And the cops, it's like they took a step back because I just wasn't reacting like they thought I would. They pulled me to my feet, and everybody's cheering like from both sides. You feel like a freaking rock star. And I just started doing like the most radical thing I could, which was chanting anticapitalista at like the top of my lungs while they like put me into the freaking paddy wagon.
Were the cops like, oh shit, we beat his ass so bad he's speaking in tongues?
They do not have a high level of education. In fact, I think the NYPD bans people who are too smart from becoming cops.
It's like a broken remote. Just hit it in the head again. It'll work.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's like I couldn't go back to the anarchist movements of the 30s, but Occupy Wall Street was a heavily focused anarchist movement, and so joining that, I didn't just fight for something I believed in. I got an important experience that I could then bring to my writing, so that I'm not just simply rewriting, Orwell or a history book word for word. It's important for me to have the emotional content. And to really kind of understand Durruti's story and the significance that he and people like Nestor Makhno played, in this early, incredibly savage part of the 20th century. 1900s. I always get that wrong.
The rise of fascism. Do you see anything? There's an interesting conversation happening, more so in academic circles and of course here on the internet, about the idea of a rise of fascism. Our good friend Daniel Bessner has written about why he thinks there is not a rise of fascism, because he feels that the same things that caused it to rise in the 30s and 40s don't exist in this current context, right? As someone that's been researching this period, especially fascist Spain, do you see something similar here in the States, or do you think it's its own individual thing?
I think Karl Marx said something that each great historical personage appears basically 2 times. The first as a tragedy and the second time as a farce. And I think that's very accurate. I mean, in a way, fascists are resurging. You saw that with the alt-right, and their funding by the billionaire Mercer family. You got Bolsonaro. Though I would say a more accurate representation of a like real fascist movement is like, for instance, ISIS. Like, what you got to understand, if people are thinking like there's going to be a civil war, like eminently in the West, it's because they haven't studied these civil wars, and how they came about. The fascism, it really rose out of veterans, who came back from either brutal colonial people with their actual colonialist policies rebounding on their own countries, or just like disaffected veterans who were then swept up in movements and used as literal foot soldiers. So, I mean, what I've always said was I was on RT one time having a debate with this guy, Anthony Bryan Logan, and he was trying to compare Antifa to the fascists. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, so, you know, you're talking about the black shirts and the brown shirts. I mean, like in Spain, like the freaking fascists, like stripped their enemies naked, force fed them castor oil and like brought them through the streets. They took, you know, they used rape as a weapon, you know, and they would capture like women and parade their undergarments through the streets on their bayonets after murdering them. So, you know, this new, I mean, yeah, Richard Spencer sucks, but
Yeah.
you know, like that's the world that Durruti and Nestor Makhno inhabited is so much brutal than anything we can really imagine, outside of those of us who are in a war zone or were raised in a war zone. So, yeah, I think there's a real threat of fascism. Obviously, you know, Trump attempting January 6th, you know, well, again, a farce, but like a farce that did attempt to build and control a real fascist movement. So I think there's a danger of it, but I think that danger is very much overlooked and and you know, people think it's too much of a threat or much more of a threat than it actually is.
Interesting. What do you think, Toussaint?
Oh, I think that's an awesome answer. I feel like I just found my answer. That's yeah, no, that was perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
I mean, like, so I'm writing the third issue of Durruti right now, which involves Francisco Franco. We're introducing the villain. And if you guys remember, I'm gonna, this is a secret thing. I haven't shown it to anybody yet. But there is another major comic influence, for like, you know, art imitating life, life imitating art. If you guys get a chance, after this episode, go and Google or do it in the second window, the hand of Saint Teresa de Avila, which was the severed hand of a saint that Franco carried around with him like it was the freaking nuclear football. Dude supposedly slept with it under his pillow and died while clutching it. And so when I was writing the script, you know, of the movie, I was like, oh, perfect metaphor for fascism. Golden and shining on the outside, shriveled and dead on the inside, and probably not even the thing that it purports to be. But then, you know, as I'm transliterating into a comic, I have to look up what this hand freaking looked like, so I can send it to my artist. And I find the picture, and it's the Infinity Gauntlet. It's literally like even the gems match.
No way.
It's and you bet your ass I play that up. But yeah, so I don't know how that happened or where it happened, but somehow Franco's, you know, weird severed hand, you know, from the from the medieval period, you know, made it to Thanos.
Did Kirby write the Infinity Saga? Or he was gone by then?
Yeah, I think I can't remember who it was. I don't think it was Kirby. I remember the guy who wrote it ripped off Darkseid essentially. And like he made like a version that was very different, like very like stringy and thin. And the guy was like, no, if you're gonna rip off, you know, DC, just use Darkseid.
Go full hog, yeah.
Yeah.
go full hog and show it. What is your take on the current mainstreaming of superhero movies? Again, as someone that grew up liking comics, I'm sure there's part of you that enjoys some of it. And, you know, a good friend of mine and a friend of the show, Teray Reed, looks at, you know, a comic fan, an animation fan, but also looks at the live action movies as more fascistic in nature. How do you view kind of the rise of these things?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say the superhero movies, like the reason why they're dominating now is kind of two things. One, the technology is here. For the longest time, you couldn't adapt a lot of superhero movies. And then also, like, the people who were doing the adaptations of these didn't know about comics, they didn't like comics, and they didn't understand them. A great example, like, just go look up Kevin Smith's story about dealing with the major producer who had actually been behind the Batman movie while they were trying to get a Superman movie out. And you'll really see, like, this guy, I think, was like Barbara Streisand's like hairstylist. And suddenly, like, the thing that I always remember from Kevin Smith's story about this is he tells the whole movie to the guy, and the guy's like sitting on a couch like this, and he gets up and he says, "Do you know why we're going to do a good job with this movie?" And Kevin's like, I don't know why, because he's trying to get the job. And he's like, because we understand Superman. We're from the streets.
Okay.
So, like,
woo!
Yeah,
Luke Cage Superman.
Exactly. Oh man. So, like, yeah, I mean, the people that are doing it now, a lot of them are, have been brought on by Marvel. So they're not just having people who don't know what they're doing and they're just adapting something to a different style do it. But then also, like, the comic book style sequential storytelling, where you're not just in a movie, but like you're linking them up into these giant universes. People are able to do that now when they just couldn't before, because you'd have to go get all the videotapes as opposed to just like popping on a streaming service. So I think that's why they're popular. I think definitely there is, if not fascist, heavily authoritarian undertones. Great example actually would be, and I love the movie, but like, the second Batman movie by Christopher Nolan. The Dark Knight, and especially The Dark Knight Rises, where, it was funny because when Occupy Wall Street was happening right around the time that movie was being shot. And Christopher Nolan had apparently wanted to use Occupy protesters, like video of us, like in the movie itself. When I heard this, I thought he was doing it like he sided with us. But, you watch The Dark Knight Returns, or you watch The Dark Knight Rises, and it's like he very clearly sides essentially with authoritarian forces and thinks that the left are somehow secretly a cover for nuking New York. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that there's definitely is a somewhat fascistic undertone to these kind of great man narratives that are told in comics. A great one to read actually is Superman Red Sun, which I think is phenomenal. Batman is an anarchist whose father was killed by the chief of police, and Superman landed in Georgia.
Tbilisi, Georgia.
Yeah. And so, like, there is a subset of comic fans who are fascists, though they are kind of separate from the standard comic fans. They've been trying to do this incredibly dumb thing that they've called Comicsgate, which is basically a scam just to get as much money as possible out of Indiegogo. But it is a subculture that still exists.
And for those of you that don't want to read Superman Red Sun, you can watch the animated version.
Nice.
There you go. Watch the animated version. Tucson, are you a comic fan at all? A little bit?
I am a comic fan, actually.
I know you are.
Yeah.
But what is your opinion on that as far as some of these stories being somewhat fascistic?
I agree with some of the audience being fascistic, but for the most part, that's not the siren song of this type of work.
No, not Brenton's work, but I mean, these movies in general.
Right, that's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't think they're making fascists either. but they're definitely giving a portrayal of authority, of an ultimate authority.
There's a, we were watching, me and Kuba and Jean were watching the Falcon and Winter Soldier series. Mm-hmm. And I had hopes that was going to be interesting because they changed a singular character in the Marvel Universe called the Flag Smasher. And they made it kind of almost a group of, I would say, kind of like an anarchistic group of people that were trying to smash borders because, and what's funny is I can say this now and everyone knows what I'm talking about. When the snap happens and half of the population dies, certain nation states were short people. So in places like Israel, they needed to, import Palestinians over to just keep the country afloat. So where borders were the site of like civil wars, again, i.e., and apartheid-like conditions, all of that ends with a snap, which is the whole Thanos theory, right? And so these people, when they re-snap back, then the world order had to get back together. So there's these group of anarchists that get super soldier serum and go around and try to, destroy borders, colonial borders, if you want to call them that. And of course, Captain America and Falcon come in and save the day, but not Captain America. I'm sorry.
The Winter Soldier.
Yeah, because Captain America is gone, inverted quotes, and he is replaced with a regular man named U.S. Agent, who's also a Marvel character. And
we're not beautiful name.
We're not going to get super into it, but U.S. Agent actually commits an extremely brutal murder of one of the anarchist super soldiers, and the anarchist super soldiers are kind of turned into ISIS type characters by like the second or third episode. So it really does turn into America good, and only through this good lens can we have global peace.
Yep, that was incredibly just disheartening to see, because I felt a lot of what you were feeling while I was watching that. Like at the beginning, I was really excited because Marvel was going there. They're talking about like they had a character in there who was like a black super soldier that was suppressed. The government kind of ruined his life, despite him, being, this great hero that did a lot of stuff for them during like World War II. So, I think a lot of things like really parallels, like, a lot of what we have learned about the American empire, like since Iraq, with the advent of social media. We see the brutal murder, because people now can, they can send this stuff, they can videotape it and send it out on their phones. So a lot of things that just most people weren't aware of, or if they were aware of them, they purposely chose not to learn enough about them that they'd have to do something about it. That's clearly influenced, the art that's coming out, and particularly that series. But, in much the same way that like Christopher Nolan had to create a quasi-leftist movement under Bane, to nuke New York and destroy, the stadium. Like they just have the flag smashers for no reason start murdering people just because they think that this is the only way people will listen to us.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, ISIS did that. Like, it wasn't, that wasn't the only thing they did, but, they had those brutal videos of the beheadings and everything. Wagner with the sledgehammer has done similar things. But what they don't seem to understand, or if they do understand it, they purposefully ignore it or are prevented from actually, talking about it because of the mouse, is that leftist radicals, especially those, in the more libertarian, socialist, anarchist direction, are motivated primarily, by a universal regard for life with neither with neither distinction nor rank. So, and I mean, if you read, Anarchy's Cossack, if you read the history of Durruti in the Spanish Civil War by Abel Paz, you kind of realize that the way these guys conducted themselves and the values that they had prevented exactly the situation that, the Marvel writers of Falcon and the Winter Soldier think, immediately just goes to killing people randomly, and the only way it can be solved is by stern talking to the rulers of the world.
You don't like the moralizing at the end? And we're going to solve racism in this as well.
It's really funny because, so many things about Nestor Makhno's life are just so incredibly dramatic and amazing. Like, if you're just vaguely familiar with Nestor Makhno, knowing that he had the Black Army during during the Russian Revolution, and fought the Reds, fought the Blacks, fought the Greens, entered into a alliance with the Red Army twice, and then eventually was suppressed and forced to flee to France, where he lived in exile. I mean, but if you get down into the details of this, it's just nuts. Like, if I wrote this stuff, I'd be like, oh, come on, Brent, you're laying it on a little thick. But this is the actual history. Here, I wanted to bring this up real quick. So Makhno was in prison for 9 years for becoming an anarchist and having a radical book club that then also, started engaging in literal class warfare. This all came from his brother being drafted and died in Manchuria. So when he was in prison with a number of other anarchists after he was captured, they're sitting there. He's been condemned to death. And Igor Bondarenko, a similarly elder anarchist that is condemned with him, literally says this to him: "Listen, Makhno, I will die by the hangman's noose, but you will live. Your sentence will be commuted and the revolution will set you free. When it does, you must hoist the black flag of anarchy over Ukraine, and by so doing, put an end to the social disorder plaguing our people. I know this because I have seen you in action, Nestor, and you do not tremble before our torturers." Now that is incredible on its own, but then it goes on. When the other prisoners objected to Igor's words, stating that Makhno was small, physically weak, sickly, and possessed of no great intelligence, the elder anarchist replies, "It is not by physical might nor exceptional intellect that the world will be born anew. Rather, it is through unwavering faith and the will that comes with great inner strength. That and that alone is what is needed." And of course, his words proved prophetic. He went to the hangman's noose, and Makhno he had his sentence commuted and was set free. And he did everything that, Igor said he would do. Beyond just a very interesting military and political leader, there are some spiritual dimensions to Nestor Makhno and to the anarchist movement as a whole.
That's fascinating. When you say these quotes, I'm like, man, people said some real deep shit back then. I'm over here, tearing up over either they don't know, don't show, or don't care about what goes on in the hood.
I love the way that the old anarchists wrote. It's informed the dialogue that I write. In issue 1 of Durruti, when he gives his speech to the judge, thinking he's about to be sent to Argentina to be executed, I took it directly, a huge amount of it, from an actual letter that he wrote to his brother while he was in prison. When you read, Durruti or Makhno or Emma Goldman or Rudolf Rocker, and even George Orwell, who wasn't an anarchist, but, witnessed, probably the second most successful or most successful, depending upon how you define them, anarchist movement of all time. there is a ridiculous amount of heart and soul and just sheer humanity to these people. And what I love more than anything is that if you just go back and look at like pictures of Durruti and Nestor Makhno, these guys are complete badasses, but they're also like kind of doofy. Mm-hmm. and they seem to know it and own it. So, you know, there's both the sort of superhero or superhero aspect, and then there's the very human aspect, and the fact that you realize that these men, while they were incredibly rare individuals, and I don't think things would have happened the way they happened without them, mm-hmm. they were not on their own, that they were an expression of, you know, the will of the people. It's why I call it like shadow of the people, because, you know, Durruti says we are the shadow of the people against the brightness of power. You know, no matter how dark, no matter how bright the sun, a man cannot escape his shadow. So in a lot of ways, like, you know, these heroes of the anarchist movement, they were not simply heroes because of who they were, but they were heroes because of the conditions and the around them and the people that formed them. They were an expression of the movement, as opposed to, you know, a great man riding the tides of history.
Well, this is what I want to get into with my final question for you. I think there's a problem in the West with the idea of the great man of history myth. I sometimes feel that with the advent of technology, we can all be our own a great man of history, and we confuse collective struggle with collective catharsis. Are you afraid that with the success of the Durruti comics, people can confuse his collective struggle for a messianic myth?
I hope not. You know, what I'm working, so as an artist, I'm kind of the opposite of a propagandist. A propagandist lies to you with the truth. Whereas an artist, our goal is to tell the truth with lies, you know. What's important to me about this, and you know, my comic, it is fictional. Because, you know, life is not story shaped, and, you know, a history book can be very difficult to read and get through, even when, you know, all of these cool things, you know, are happening in it, specifically because human brains, especially human brains in the first world right now, absorb information in a very particular way. You know, you know, to explain it all, I'd have to like get into screenplay structure. You know, and I'm not going to do that because that'll be boring. And there's a thing on my YouTube channel you can watch that talks about that. So one of the things that's really important in most stories, and I've broken out of this a little bit from time to time, is to have a single protagonist. And you get a lot of storytelling bonuses about that, of having one character, you know, that goes through a change as a result of being, you know, being in this story. That's a convention that's very difficult to get away from. You know, Brecht tried to, by using like the chorus and drawing attention to the superficiality of entertainment. You know, showing stuff behind the scenes, like while the people were, you know, performing. And like I've done things like I wrote a script called Berserker, set in Iceland in the year 997, which is going to probably be my fourth comic once I'm done this and the one coming after it. And like what I sort of worked on with that, and also with Snow White Zombie, is more of a dramatic circle where I have several key characters and one does not outshine the others. So that's how I've tried to counter it. I would say what I'm most worried about putting a story like Durruti out into the world is I want people to understand Durruti in his context. You know, I have done a lot of radical activism, you know, and there is a certain subset of the left, particularly online, but, you know, occasionally in the street as well, that think that like you're not really a radical unless you want to kill all of your political opponents right now. Like Yeah, and as I said last time, there was a guy at Occupy, he wasn't a major organizer. He was just there. Could have been an infiltrator, but like he was sitting there like yelling about how we needed to be violent and how this was war.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it, I was like, we can't even hold up our signs in a stiff breeze. We're not making war. Yeah. When you look back on stuff like the Harlan County War, for instance, and the Durruti, and his movement in Spain, Nestor Makhno's movement in Ukraine, the conditions that they lived with were so unbelievably terrible that like there's almost no, unless you like delve into their history, there is almost no concept that a person can have related to like just relating their life to this particular struggle with the material conditions these people lived under. I think in a lot of ways, the system that we live with is monstrous, but it's pushed a lot of that monstrousness into the third world. Or against minorities within their own borders. But like, the world that Durruti lived in before the Spanish Civil War, one of the things with the fascists, because you mentioned, like you can go and look up the first Rift War in Morocco, and you will see pictures of like Spanish soldiers with these severed heads of Moorish tribesmen. Like, they're just taking a freaking picture there.
Yeah.
It is absolutely insane. And I really think a lot of this just came out of the brutality of the social structure. And as the world has become more democratic, that brutality has eroded. And so like when people look back on history, they either think like we need to be acting exactly like them right now, or they think like these people are just completely insane and they're monsters that just start murdering people for no reason, like in the Winter Soldier and the Falcon.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you bring that up because finally finished this paper, this column I'm writing for Sublation, where I kind of talk about the same thing. And when I was looking over Durruti 2 and thinking about my new fears of great men in history myths, because I'm also kind of a fan of grand narratives. I'm a walking contradiction. I think there needs to be grand narratives for the left.
I would agree.
And I'm looking at Durruti, and I was remembering the first time you were on, and what I dig is these kind of grand narratives that we've been missing in leftist history, because we are so bombarded with right-wing narratives that we don't even understand our right-wing narratives. You know what I mean? And where people that watch this show may be like, oh, well, all the Law and Order shows are propaganda, blah, blah, blah. It's like that show's still been on for over 20 years or 20 seasons. So whether a small handful of people realize it's propaganda, I mean, it's one of the longest running shows. The biggest podcasts are true crime, which are just filled with state propaganda. It's important to have these kind of counter narratives, but then you also get stuck in this idea of these great men in history. We kind of forget the context in the moment in which they lived. And when we see individual injustice, so for example, George Floyd, for example, you see these, snuff films ad nauseum in the news. You get a collective action, but what prevents that action from becoming just a cathartic exercise? Once you've blown up the city, once you've blown up a cop car or a police station, then what? Because nothing has changed. And we don't act collectively to change the conditions in which that create George Floyd's in the first place.
Yeah, I think you're 1,000% right with that. I would say the way to not get sucked into that, to tell you the truth, is to actually read this great suppressed history. You know, like Makhno and Durruti maintained the entire time that they were an outgrowth of you know, the movements of their times. I think also, like, you know, when you're looking at, you know, these kinds of massive injustices, like George Floyd, like Eric Garner, you know, like, there is an emotional reaction to that because we are humans, and we, you know, unless you're a psychopath, you know, you are naturally will be sympathetic and compassionate towards others of our species. Yeah, so I mean, I would say, to what you're acknowledging there, you know, what you're pointing at is the biggest problem is a lack of historical context in our mass media and in our popular entertainment. And, you know, this is because this is not for no reason. You know, one, you know, people like Durruti make rich people uncomfortable, and you can't make a movie without millions of dollars, which means you need rich people. You know, and then also, like, you know, Hollywood was purged of all of the sympathetic, you know, one of my idols, Arthur Miller, refused to name names, you know, but Elia Kazan did. He rolled it over on everybody. You know, so we are coming up in a time where, you know, the MAGA, like the MAGA fascist movement, you know, cults like QAnon, these are the result of a lack of balance in humans' understanding of history and understanding of themselves in politics. When people think like the Democratic Party and you know, Nancy Pelosi is this far leftist, you know, who's going to bring communism to America, you know, it shows sort of the absolute derangement of modern political culture. And the reason that derangement exists is because people are disconnected with history and from each other. And the only way that we can get that back is through storytelling, you know, either through dramatic works like mine or through, you know, phenomenal histories like Anarchy's Cossack and like Durruti and the Spanish Civil War, you know, put out by AK Press, which I should also say, by the way, so AK Press is carrying issue number 1 and will soon be carrying Durruti issue number 2. So you can get it from them as well for a pretty decent price.
Oh, and also want to acknowledge that wherever you are watching or listening to the show, there are links in the description to the Indiegogo campaign, and as well as where you can find all of Brenton's work.
Yeah, please do give to the Indiegogo campaign. You know, the 30%, which is basically my entire profit margin, is going to Razom for Ukraine. It is a 501c3 nonprofit. It is not, they do not provide weapons. They don't do anything for the war effort. They provide cultural work and, you know, critical life-saving mutual aid to Ukrainian civilians who have been injured and displaced by this conflict. And whatever, you know, your position on geopolitical politics, I think we can all agree that the people who are suffering because of this war that need the help the most are the you know, it's the proletariat, it's the people on the ground, it's the you know, back in Nestor Makhno's day, it was the peasants. You know, so they are a liberal organization. Unfortunately, I didn't have connections with any radical organizations in Ukraine that were strong enough to where I felt I could solicit money for them. But, you know, you get a really cool cover of Nestor Makhno behind me doing what he does best, which is mowing down white Russians with a tachanka. You know, and at the same time, you know, you provide some aid that just might save somebody's life. And I like, that's why I ran this. You know, Makhno, I felt that I could not tell a story that featured a character as heroic as Makhno without doing something, you know, for the people of Ukraine, for the people of his, you know, for the people that he fought and died to protect and liberate. So please do give to that, and you'll get cool stuff at the same time.
Toussaint, do you have any words?
That was going to be my question. I've been putting the link in the chat for the whole show. I just wanted, some context for the link which you just gave, which is really good.
Yeah. If people are wondering, by the way, why I ran an Indiegogo after running a Kickstarter, it's because Kickstarter wouldn't let me raise money for charity. And they didn't tell me that until I'd done a month's worth of work. So
Wow.
You're on my shit list, Kickstarter.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No. Say what?
That sucks.
It really does. Especially since I have like no presence on Indiegogo. So, I could honestly really use the support of comrades. The goal is not very high, only $1,500. We can get that. We've got a little less than a month to go. So please do go in there, pledge, and you won't even get charged unless we hit our goal. So everything is safe. I'm not doing the Indiegogo thing where I just, take the money immediately. I want to make sure that I have enough to actually provide something of substance to Raisam while giving, something of substance to all of you.
You're like the perfect person to do this. I feel like the actor background, I mean, obviously you're a writer and that's primarily what you're doing in this, but I feel like the actor background is really helping you out in selling all of this. You are your instrument, man.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I'm classically trained in theater. I started out wanting to be an actor and, realized pretty quickly that I wasn't too keen on memorizing lines and didn't want to be a part of someone else's creativity. I always, I was in a play and I was just like sitting there. I was in Trojan Women, the Sartre translation of Trojan Women. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't really like this. Can I rewrite this monologue? Can I rewrite Sartre? And so at that point I kind of realized, my real talent, was communicating and storytelling. So writing, I put food on the table for over a decade working as a nonprofit arts telefundraiser and telefundraising manager. I've raised money for a number of, major arts institutions. Also, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is just the specific weird circumstances of my life. Whether I'm writing a fight scene because I'm a martial artist and I know how the fight goes, or, I'm, capturing hopefully the essence of this movement because I got kneed in the spine and thrown into a police motorcycle at Occupy.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, we have opened up the phone lines. So if you guys have a question for any of us, the number is 626-873-8658. We rarely open up the phone lines on the free show, as I just don't want to hear weird people call in.
I want to hear weird people call in. Bring me your weirdest, internet.
You ask the internet and the internet will reward you. And I don't know if I'm ready for that prize.
While we're waiting, do you want to hear a story about Nestor Makhno?
Yeah.
Because my God, this did not. I don't know if this is gonna. I'm gonna do a comic of his life. Probably after Berserker. But like, okay, so there was this one point during the first, before his alliance with the Red Army, when he's fighting the Austro-German invaders. And they wind up capturing a entire detachment of soldiers with a fairly high up commander in a very Robin Hood style. Like they pretend to be part of the Austro-German army and then wind up taking them all captive. They execute the commander. And they find this is almost a D&D plot. Like they find a letter on him about this fancy party he has been invited to with a bunch of other, brass and some very wealthy Ukrainians who are collaborating. And so, they put on the uniform and pretend to be this guy. It's like Makhno and, one of his closest compatriots. And literally these people are sitting there toasting to the Austro-German soldiers, and hopefully they will very soon catch Nestor Makhno. At which point Nestor Makhno reveals himself and tosses a bomb in the middle of the table.
Jesus!
Like he's freaking Bugs Bunny. and like just freaking blows these bourgeoisie assholes away.
Damn.
It's hilarious and weird, and it's so weird that I'm sure that it happened because you kind of can't make that up.
Well, did you see it was a couple weeks ago in France, the protesters took over like a really fancy restaurant?
I did not.
Yeah, they took over this like high-end restaurant, and they just started snatching bottles of wine and like pouring it for themselves. No bombs, but they did take over the restaurant, and just the look of mortal fear on the faces of the rich people in the restaurant was rather hilarious.
That is awesome, and that actually that mirrors the anarcho-syndicalists in Spain, the CNT5. I mean, they took over the Hotel Ritz and turned it into a free kitchen for everyone in town. Also, interesting that you bring up fine dining, because I was commissioned to write a script which has just gotten about half of the funding it needs by Enon Films, so sort of a prequel to Durruti, which is called Wanderer's Feast. And this chronicles the real life story of Durruti before the revolution, where I mean, he cut a swath of revolution across 5 countries and 2 continents. And when he left Cuba, he wound up in Mexico. And the police were like scouring the slums trying to find Durruti. And what he wound up doing, as they were looking for him, he was in the finest restaurant in all of Tampico, pretending to be a rich man and just ordering all this like awesome fine dining food and stuff. And he wound up having a meeting that I've dramatized with another anarchist from the local, I think it was the CGT. But like this particular meeting, the anarchist he's very uncomfortable because he comes in and like, he sees Durruti in this suit surrounded by all this finery, and he's like, I'm an anarchist. I'm kind of uncomfortable with this, but also like I really want to eat some of this. And over this long lunch that he has with Durruti, what winds up happening is that Durruti asks him, he says, "What would you do if you had 100,000 pesos?" And the guy's like, "Well, if I had 100,000 pesos," because he's a teacher. He's like, "If I had 100,000 pesos, I don't know. I'd found my own school, to make sure to teach literacy to all of these kids, and Durruti's, and he's like, but that's a dream, Durruti." And Durruti's like, okay, yeah. And after the meeting the guy goes back to his union and meets with everybody, and about a week later in the mail, he gets a package from Durruti with 100,000 pesos.
Oh, damn.
Yep. Durruti is just like, he's like, "I love kids, take this and use it." If I recall, I think in this situation or some others, people were like, "Where did you get this money?" He's like, "I stole it from the bourgeoisie." Like, they wouldn't, it's not like they're going to give it to me if I ask them. So, yeah, we've dramatized that. We've changed some things up. The protagonist is now a female, saber-wielding like Mexican warrior woman, and her story was actually taken from a number of people who fought with in the Mexican Civil War with Luis Blanco, which by the way, at some point, if you just want me to go nuts about like the Mexican Civil War and Revolution, have me back on. I haven't done.
We have one rule here since I live in Mexico, and that's Mexico is a wonderful place with a very rich history that we will never discuss.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm just not trying to die.
Good point. All right, well then I won't go into too many details about Wanderer's Feast. But like, I'm really excited about it. We got half the funding we need. I'm meeting with the producers, and I really hope that we can start the anarchist cinematic universe.
All right.
That would be an awesome counter to what's going on with Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
I hope so.
I mean, people had a lot of hope for movies like Judas and the Black Messiah, and me and my neighbor and good friend Ben Burgess definitely we have gotten into debates over the idea of that being a quote unquote revolutionary movie. Like, I don't think so at all. I think it's kind of nestled with the great man of history myth, and as Fred Hampton dies, per the movie, so does the movement. So I don't really dig the way Hollywood portrays this stuff, because it can oversimplify ideas. And I think we're in a moment where we constantly are oversimplifying ideas. With all this information that we have, we always want it massively compressed. How can I take an entire book in 20 minutes? How can I take, theories that people have been learning about for the last 150 years and learn it all in a 90-second video? I just need to understand the important points so I can see on which side I'm going to lean. So, these movies to me do the same thing. I'm going to give it to you real simple. This guy, Fred Hampton, was really awesome. He was infiltrated by one man, which wasn't true. And, the most awesome man in the world died at 21. It's like, these were kids. Like, you're making kids these amazing figures in history. And again, it's just an oversimplification of a more complex time, I think.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. What I found was really interesting. I've written, I basically condensed Makhno's life into an essay that I thought was going to be 6 minutes long, and now is much, much longer. I'm going to hopefully be putting out a movie, like not a movie, like a video on like who was Nestor Makhno, like what I did on my channel for who was Buenaventura Durruti. And I'm writing the very end of it right now, when he is forced to flee Ukraine. Because what's crazy is, like, you would expect that after he saved the Bolsheviks, like literally saved the Reds, by absolutely obliterating this major. Basically, Denikin's army during the revolution, the Whites, they were within 200 kilometers of Moscow. The white generals were like jockeying with each other who would be the first to enter the city. Lenin and the others are making plans to flee to Finland. And down south, Makhno has very slowly and deliberately drawn this massive white army out to where its supply lines became incredibly thin, and he fought this like Helm's Deep battle with them and won like massively. And in fact, I think I have, hang on, let me find this, because I want to read to you exactly what they said here.
There's also Durruti and Makhno are a little older when they start fighting as well.
Not Makhno. He was quite young.
Well, he dies at, was he even 40 when he died?
He died at 40.
Okay.
Like, I think exactly 40. Yeah, Durruti was much older. I mean, he started doing his radical stuff and fighting, at 18 years of age, I think 17. The thing that really got Durruti to, I guess, start his radical journey was he had been striking in solidarity with the Asturian miners. And like, then the government, the Spanish king, ordered the miners to be machine gunned. And then Durruti shortly thereafter got his draft notice into the same military he'd just seen kill all of his friends. So famously declared, the king shall have one less soldier and one more revolutionary. But yeah, I mean, like by the time this takes place, like by the Spanish Civil War, Durruti he's in his 40s. I think he is 40 exactly. And he doesn't live to see 41, unfortunately. Yeah. All right, here we go. I think I found this. The Whites. All right, so here we go. Having disappeared the night, but the din of battle. Oh yeah, okay, up here. Sorry, there's just so much cool shit. As the very last of the revolutionary insurgent army of Ukraine prepared to take their final stand, detonating the last of their explosives and firing off what remained of their ammunition store, the anarchists held nothing back save a single bullet each, a round which was meant for themselves, as everyone knew that with this enemy no prisoners would be taken and no quarter given. Everyone left alive braced for the heroic death they knew was swiftly coming. And then the enemy gunfire, which moments before had torn through the pockmarked air like a swarm of black flies, slowed and then stopped. The din of battle replaced with a palpable silence and the trill of faraway bird song. What had happened? Nestor Makhno had happened. Having disappeared the night before, Nestor had managed to outflank his enemies. At exactly the crucial moment, Anarchy's Cossack, supported by his blackguard, had thrown himself into the battle at the head of an irresistible cavalry charge. "It's Botko," whispered the beleaguered defenders before raising their voices in nervous relief. "Botko, he's fighting at the front. Our Botko with his saber." Their whispers turned to shouts and shouts to cheers, and soon the previously doomed insurgents had drawn their sabers, fixed bayonets, and hurled themselves against the stunned whites with the fury of 10 times their number. Shocked and bewildered, the gobsmacked whites attempted an orderly retreat, which quickly gave way to panic as they watched the speed and brutality by which their brothers in arms were dispatched, a sight of close quarters combat which would later be described as a hacking. In abject terror, the white soldiers turned and fled. In an instant, the hunters becoming the hunted. No longer an army, but a scattered mob, the swarm of whites attempted a 15-kilometer run, a desperate attempt to reach the Sinuka River. What happened? And there's more to that, but like, holy shit. Yeah. What I love about it is like so much of it is like so, almost Hollywood-esque. Like that should be a movie. That is probably a scene in a number of movies, just not as well realized or real. Right. But then also like a hacking. Because like, holy shit, have we learned Ukrainians are kind of intense.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
The other funny thing, by the way, about Makhno.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry
about that.
Fine.
Sorry,
I'm talking too much anyway.
Okay. No, you were not. Yeah. No, you got stuck. I got stuck. I mean, so I was just making sure I was back. No, keep going, please. Yeah. The funny thing about Makhno.
Yeah. So the funny thing about Makhno is when he signs the second alliance with the Red Army, I think in the correspondence beforehand, or this might have happened at a different point, but I'm remembering it as then. He's literally like, he's writing a letter to Lenin, and he's saying to Lenin basically like, we're doing this in Ukraine or South Russia, as you want to call it. Like, I don't care. So, like the roots of this conflict, like they go back deep, like far, far back into history. I also think the really interesting thing is what the whites and the reds were able to accomplish when working together. Because, obviously the left has had a bit of a problem with revolutionary solidarity, to say the least.
Toussaint, did you want to add something?
I think this history is fascinating. I think probably a lot of our audience is more familiar with the Russian side of this story, and I guess more of a socialist lineage. So I think this kind of information is really good, and you bring it to life incredibly well.
I do have to say the imagery in Durruti 1 and 2 is beautiful, and it captures it right away from page 1. You're kind of sucked right into the story. So you did a really good job, I think, of you don't mess around.
No, you don't. That's very true.
Well, yeah, I don't know. That may be partially a factor of me like just beating my head against the wall of the New York underground theater scene for 10 years. Mm-hmm. But it also, I got to give a lot of credit to the actual history, and also to also to my artist Juan Francisco Franco.
Oh, it was one of the Francos, huh?
Juan Francisco Mota. I'm sorry.
Pull off your face like Scooby-Doo.
Oh, yeah, Juan Francisco Mota. He did the whole thing like phenomenally. Another, by the way, cool thing about that book is there's a lot of really little details. One of which is that if you look at there's a big 2-page spread where Durruti is reminding Makhno essentially of everything that he's done, for the movement, and reminding the reader, of course, or letting the reader know. If you look directly at the faces of a number of those revolutionaries, those are actually people who gave to the Kickstarter. So
oh my gosh,
you can get yourself a cameo in
That's pretty cool.
story by helping me to continue to tell it. But the other cool thing is there's like, even when I change like the history, like one of the really important things for me, as I said, like an artist is the opposite of a propagandist. I wanted to be sure to, communicate the essence of what happened in a way that a reader can understand and will find entertaining. And in that time, I have to change things. I have to, collapse them. I have to invent things just to make it all work with the story math. What I did, if you look at one point, and this is a conceit, it could have happened, but it probably didn't. Nestor Makhno has created fake passports for Durruti, Ascaso, and yeah. Now, if you look at the original, the guy with Durruti in the original picture from his jail support that you can find, when they're in prison in France, is not Oliver. He is Gregorio Jover, an even older anarchist than Durruti. I wound up, because Ascaso, Durruti, and Oliver are so important together in like the Spanish Civil War, I needed to keep them together from the beginning of the story. So, Gregorio Jover gets replaced with he gets replaced with my brain just crashed. Who did I say it was? Durruti, Ascaso, Oliver. There we go. Wow. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so Oliver, he gets replaced with Oliver, but if you look at the name on Oliver's passport, it's Gregorio Jover.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. I want to go back and look.
I'm a very big fan of like 6-person jokes and very technical like details that there's stuff in these books that only I know about. And unless I start telling people, like, I don't think anybody's going to get it.
Well, look, it's been an hour and a half. It looks like everyone's scared to call in. I don't know why people are scared.
Terrified.
Come on, you guys can call in. You can tell me I'm being undialectical. It'll be a blast.
Oh man, you would think that people would want to, do that, but I guess I don't know. I guess we didn't say anything controversial enough. Before we go, your parting words about why people should check out Durruti 1 and 2. The importance.
My wife, when we were living in Harlem at the time, and I had just finished the Durruti screenplay, and she proofread it for me because I'm terrible at that. And she looked at the picture of Durruti, which is on the cover. I can't show it because this will blink it out of existence. But she was just looking at the picture of Durruti on the cover, and she's like, "This is a really good thing you did. Like, the story is really good, but who Durruti was is something that needs to be preserved. It needs to be, told to future generations so that, we can place ourselves within a tradition, within a line of history. And I feel that, like, when Durruti died, a Spanish poet famously said that Durruti's nobility while living would one day cause an army of 10,000 Durrutis to spring up behind him. And in much the same way with like Durruti and Nestor Makhno, Makhno came to a horrible end. His last words were actually to his daughter, Lucy, where he told her, be happy, be healthy, be safe, be happy, my child. And then he died, passing into unconsciousness. At 40 years of age, of tuberculosis, which was sustained while in prison, that he got it for the first time in prison for those 9 years he was locked up. And he kept it at bay. He survived 11 major bullet wounds. And through it all, the most incredible thing is that the worst excesses of revolutionary bloodlust were, despite how terrifying he was, like when Makhno created the Free Soviet, his first Free Soviet, he was able to take over the town, bloodlessly. He got the rich bourgeoisie and kulaks to voluntarily give over their estates, and astoundingly, no revenge was taken on them. They were given the choice of participating in the collective work for an equal share in everything, and that they made, working side by side with the people that they had ruled. And it was such an incredible thing that a number of them came around to Makhno's way of thinking. The Red Army soldiers who were tasked with literally hunting him down and killing him. I know I've read a couple things, but I really want to get this out before we go.
Yeah, go. Yes.
So let me. I'm hoping that I remembered to make this into the right thing. Carried. Yes, here we go. Okay, so Red Army soldiers. I'm going to read two quotes. One is from a commander that was going after him, and one is from a soldier that was also, put in to follow him. So the first one here, this comes from a Red Army commander. Makhno was striking everywhere. He was irresistible, beyond capture. He sauntered through the Ukraine as the fancy took him. By the way, this is after they've been betrayed, and they've killed all of his friends and destroyed the Bolsheviks have killed all his friends and destroyed his revolutionary center of gravity. He sauntered through Ukraine as the fancy took him, picking his targets, popping up whenever he wanted to. He captured regiments, even whole brigades, seizing transports, munitions, and artillery, and burst through our encirclements anytime he chose. His rout of the Kyrgyz hussars so demoralized the combatants that it robbed them of their faith in their strength and expertise. So great was their fear that they dare not wander even in broad daylight. Such was the terror of the Makhnovists' saber work. He works to... this is the same guy, Pavel Ashkamanov. He works to drive a wedge between the head and heart by letting it be known that he spares simple soldiers and ruthlessly guns down officers and commissars. He has captured the charisma of command by unleashing his last reserve, himself. Every bush, every mound, every ravine is personally accounted for. Not only does Makhno know our weaknesses, he takes the personalities of our individual commanders into his reckoning. He strikes left, then right, attacks Bernadesk, then makes for Guliai-Polye, staying no more than a day or night in a single place. In the event of failure, he vanishes, dispersing into the night. Makhno is enterprising and gallant in the extreme. The first time he let himself be encircled was a decoy. His intent was to force us to deploy to the south. When we regrouped, he saw that our forces had not moved to the south in sufficient numbers, so he let himself be encircled again. Then, once the road north was free, he broke out of our circle in a flash, leaving our troops in disarray and thoroughly disappointed. So, that's the commander. Now, this is what comes from a standard Red Army soldier when he's got the Makhnovists in what seems to be an unwinnable situation. All escape routes were severed. The area was a veritable graveyard, nothing but rocks and sheer gorges covered by ice, while continued fire spewed from our machine guns and artillery on every side. Yet the Makhnovists refused to disperse. They had all determined to die together. It was unspeakably painful to look upon the handful of insurgents surrounded by rocks, the vastness of the sky, and enemy fire. Yet they were motivated to fight to the last. Sadness, despair, and a peculiar grief gripped the soul. There was an urge to shout out to the whole world that a crime beyond expiation was being committed, that all that was most heroic in people and the best we are capable of producing in these times was being murdered and in the process of vanishing forever. What I find so incredible about these, direct accounts of Makhno from the people who were actively trying to, kill him, these people whose loyalty was to their commanders and to Moscow, they didn't even have to talk to Makhno about this. They had to fight with him and realize who he was and what he stood for. And, to the point that when they're killing them, they're when they're killing the blacks, like they are lamenting the fact that this is being done. Makhno seemed to have like an almost supernatural ability to evade, Red Army guns, like they were freaking stormtroopers. And I just have to wonder, was the stormtrooper aim real? Was it the fact of bad guns, or was it that these army soldiers did not want to shoot Makhno? Because they recognized that indeed, he'd been a brother in arms twice, and they recognized that their orders were monstrous. So, what happened in the Ukraine was a massive tragedy on every level, but there is something so palpable and beautiful and human to it. And it's like, when I read that, as an artist, how do I not do that? Especially since it really hasn't been dramatized in the West, more or less at all. There's a comic book out, it's a comic. Mm-hmm. I think there's a movie they made in Russia. I don't know how good it is. But in
Soviet Russia or contemporary Russia?
I think it was contemporary, not contemporary Russia now, or maybe it was Soviet Russia. I don't know.
Post-Soviet Russia, I guess I should say.
Yeah, probably. I think it was post-Soviet Ukraine. But yeah, I mean, it's very important that we understand that we have heroes and understand what these heroes did, because it informs us of our own power. The biggest takeaway of Makhno's story is really that, as Igor said, at the very beginning, we don't need, enormous physical strength. We don't need great intelligence. We need faith and the will to see that faith through. And I think that is the only way we're going to build this new world that every single leftist has been fighting for, since the first king put the first crown on his head and found people dumb enough to believe that made him better.
Excellent quote there.
Dusan.
I caught that.
Dusan, do you have any parting words before we go?
I want people to just check out the link, even if you're not intending to donate or to read the comic or anything. But just if you've sat through this past hour and a half, going on 2 hours, have a look at the pictures, have a look at the images. This was a real person. And the way he's depicted is very realistic in the comics too.
It's like I said, the artist did a beautiful job in this second one. It really captured me from the first one.
I was so lucky to get the 2 artists that I did. I'm very much looking forward to getting this done. It'll probably be an 8 to 12 part miniseries, and hopefully then I'll make it into 1 or 2 graphic novels. For people, if you guys do check out the Kickstarter, if you want to help, even if you can't give, first, giving even $1 helps because it bumps it up in the algorithms, but so does sharing the page. You know, and I know a lot of us don't have a lot of money. So if you want to experience the story, you can either give like $5 and get the PDF copies of it, or if you want actual physical copies for less than what you get on the Kickstarter, go to AK Press. You know, they're selling, you know, Durruti #1 right now. And I can announce also that they have requisitioned 250 copies of Durruti #2. So I'm, you know, you will be able to experience the story if you don't have a great deal of money, and you will also be able to help out in this work and help me tell this story, you know, simply by sharing it on your Facebook wall or emailing it to people you think would like it. So, yeah, so, you know, you can get the cool swag, and you can also, you know, help out in other ways. If you can also, you know, follow me on YouTube. I debate right-wing weirdos and talk about arts and politics. I'm doing a debate on Modern Day Debate tonight, which I actually have to start getting ready for, against noted fascist weirdo and Jeffrey Epstein Confederate JF Garipe and some woman named Brittany. So yeah, that'll be
some woman named Brittany.
It's going to be wild. So do check that out.
Yeah. Watch out for Brittany. She's vicious.
And you can take advantage of my pain and all of the ulcers that I've taken from talking to these.
I don't know
people.
why you guys do that insane stuff. Like I said, my neighbor and good friend debated that person Haas.
And, I have also debated Haas, but yeah, you mean Ben Burgess?
Yeah. And I have no patience for this bullshit. I'm like, you would never say any of this crazy shit to my face. You definitely wouldn't holler in front of anybody. So just please stop hollering and getting sanctimonious on. Yeah, I can't. You're a better man than me.
Well, I will chalk that up to me being a Nietzschean Buddhist. it helps to center me.
Yeah, because I'm like, you lost your fucking mind. Talking that nonsense. Well, Toussaint, are you ready to blow this popsicle stand?
Yes, I just want to encourage people again to share, especially if you can't give. Share the link. Someone else can give. Please just share it. And, you know, let it seduce you. Have a look at those images. It's really just amazing work.
It's so wonderful to hear it. We've the biggest fear for an artist is like after pouring our heart and soul across the page, like just nobody cares. So it's really good to know that, you know, this resonates with you, and I believe it'll definitely resonate with your audience. So yeah, check it out, and you know, solidarity.
Thank you, Brenton, so much for coming and hanging out with us. I'm glad we got to do this. Good luck in your debate this evening.
And really, I think it'll just be a crazy screaming match. But yeah, debate.
You're just a dumb hippie, and you center your chi and have a very good evening. And Toussaint, we are
Durruti fans.